I spent 3 years behind bars for a crime I didn't commit, framed by my own wife to clear the path for her lover. They thought I'd come out broken, desperate, ready to beg. Instead, I walked out with evidence that would destroy everything they'd built on my suffering. They should have killed my spirit when they had the chance. I thought I knew my wife. 6 years of marriage, and I believed we'd built something solid, not perfect, but real. I'm Ethan Morse, 34 years old, working as a corporate auditor for a mid-sized firm in the city. Nothing glamorous, but steady. Sienna worked in HR for a luxury hotel chain, and somewhere along the way, the woman I married started slipping through my fingers like sand. I just didn't realize I was already standing in quicksand. It started small. You know how they say it's never the big things that give cheaters away? It's the details. Sienna started wearing a new perfume. Something expensive I definitely hadn't bought her. She'd come home from work later and later, always with an excuse about meetings or team-building exercises. Her phone became an extension of her hand, screen always facing down, notifications silenced. When I'd walk into her room, she'd casually flip it over or slide it into her pocket. I'm an auditor. I notice patterns. I notice when numbers don't add up. In our marriage, the numbers had stopped making sense months ago. Then came the email. Anonymous. No message. Just a photo attachment. I opened it during my lunch break, sitting in my car with a sandwich I suddenly couldn't eat. There she was, my wife Sienna, kissing another man outside some upscale restaurant. His face was partially turned, but his hand was on her waist in a way that screamed familiarity. This wasn't a first date. This was routine. I sat there for 20 minutes, staring at that image, feeling my entire reality crack down the middle. Part of me wanted to storm home and confront her immediately, but the auditor in me knew better. If I wanted the truth, I needed evidence. I needed to document everything. I started keeping records. Dates she worked late, charges on our shared credit card that didn't match her explanations. I was going to hire a private investigator. I was going to do this smart, do this right, get proof, get a divorce, get out clean. That was the plan. I had no idea that while I was building my case against her, she was building a prison cell with my name on it. 3 weeks after that email, they came for me. 2 detectives, walking into my office in the middle of the afternoon like I was some kind of criminal. My coworkers stared as they put me in handcuffs. The charge: embezzlement. $250,000 missing from company accounts, and according to them, every single digital breadcrumb led straight back to me. Falsified documents with my signature. An offshore account opened in my name. Transaction logs from my computer. I kept saying it was impossible, that I'd never seen these accounts, never authorized these transfers. But the evidence didn't care about my protests. The evidence was a mountain, and I was buried underneath it. Then came the knife in my back, twisted by the only person I thought would ever stand beside me. My lawyer pulled me aside in the holding cell, his face grim. Sienna had given testimony against me. She'd told investigators that she'd discovered discrepancies in our finances, that I'd been acting paranoid and secretive, that she feared I might run. My own wife had handed them the rope to hang me with. Bail was denied. They froze everything, our accounts, my inheritance from my parents, everything I owned. And through the glass during her one jail visit, Sienna looked at me with tears in her eyes that I finally recognized as lies and whispered, "I'm sorry it had to be this way." That's when I understood. This wasn't about infidelity. This was about elimination. She didn't just want to leave me. She wanted me erased. And she'd found someone with the skills to make it happen. They sentenced me to 5 years. 5 years for a crime I didn't commit, for money I never touched, for a life I never lived. The judge looked at me like I was scum, like I was everything wrong with corporate America. My lawyer, the overworked public defender who barely knew my name, advised me not to appeal. "The evidence is overwhelming," he said. Overwhelming. That word haunted me through every strip search. Every night in that cell, every morning, I woke up wondering how my life had become someone else's crime scene. The first few months nearly broke me. Prison isn't like the movies. It's boredom punctuated by terror, desperation wrapped in routine. I was a white-collar guy in a concrete box, and everyone could smell it on me. I didn't belong, and that made me a target. I spent nights replaying every conversation with Sienna. Every moment I'd miss the signs. The anger was like acid eating me from the inside out. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. But mostly I just wanted to understand how she'd done it. That's when I met Luca Brennigan. My cellmate, 52 years old, serving 3 years for tax evasion. But here's the thing about Luca B. Before he got caught, he'd been a forensic accountant. The man could read financial statements like poetry and spot fraud from a mile away. He watched me for weeks, saw me scribbling notes on commissary paper, trying to map out how they'd framed me. Finally, one night, he said something that changed everything. Prison's just time, kid. You can let it destroy you, or you can use it. Think like they think. Follow the money. Follow the access. Follow the motive. So that's what I did. I became obsessed. Every detail of my case, I picked apart like a carcass. Sienna had access to my work laptop. I'd let her use it dozens of times when hers was acting up. She knew my passwords because I'd been stupid enough to use the same ones for everything. But she didn't have the technical skills to pull off something this sophisticated. Someone else had to be in the shadows, someone with real expertise. Through limited library computer access, 15 minutes twice a week, I started digging. I searched Sienna's social media, public records, anything I could find. And there he was, Trent Ashford, IT director at her hotel company. His Facebook relationship status had changed to in a relationship with Sienna Morse, exactly 2 months after I'd been sentenced. The pieces started falling into place like a puzzle made of poison. I went back further, cross-referencing what I could access. Trent had a sealed juvenile record. But I found news articles from 15 years ago, computer fraud, hacking into his high school's grading system. The charges were reduced because he was a minor, but the pattern was there. This guy knew systems. He knew how to manipulate digital trails, and he'd been sleeping with my wife. My sister Paige was the only person who never stopped believing me. She visited every month, and when I told her about Trent, something shifted in her eyes. She mortgaged her house to hire a private investigator. That investigator uncovered what I'd suspected but couldn't prove from inside. Sienna and Trent had been together for over 2 years, long before my arrest. They'd bought a house together using money from my frozen inheritance, putting it solely in Trent's name. Sienna had filed for divorce 3 months into my sentence and walked away with everything. And here's the kicker. Trent got a major promotion at the hotel right after my arrest. Convenient timing for a guy who just helped his girlfriend commit the perfect crime. Luca helped me map the embezzlement scheme, showed me where someone with Trent's skills would leave traces if you knew where to look. We built a case inside that cell, piece by piece, night after night. And slowly, the anger transformed into something colder, sharper, something patient. They thought they'd buried me. They had no idea they'd just given me 3 years to dig my way out with a blueprint for their destruction. 3 years. I walked out of that prison thinner, harder, and focused in a way I'd never been before. The man who went in had been soft, trusting, naive. The man who walked out knew exactly what people were capable of when they wanted something badly enough. Paige picked me up at the gates, and the first thing she did was hand me a folder. 3 years of investigation, surveillance photos, financial records, testimony from former coworkers. It was beautiful and devastating all at once. We had evidence, strong evidence, but not quite enough to overturn my conviction. Not yet. We needed something irrefutable. Something that would slam every door shut on them the way they'd slammed one on me. I got a job as a night security guard at an office complex across town. Minimum wage, graveyard shift, completely beneath my qualifications, but it was perfect. It kept me under the radar, gave me cash that couldn't be traced, and most importantly, gave me nights free to do what needed to be done. I started watching them. My old house, well, their house now. Bought with my inheritance, sat in a quiet suburb with large yards and distant neighbors. I'd park 3 streets over and walk through the shadows. Watching through windows like a ghost haunting his own former life. They were living like royalty. New Mercedes in the driveway, his and hers. Through the windows, I could see expensive furniture, art on the walls, wine glasses that cost more than my weekly paycheck. I watched them cook dinner together, laugh together, collapse on the couch together in the life they'd built on the foundation of my suffering. Sienna looked happy, genuinely happy, in a way she never had with me. That hurt more than I expected. Not because I still loved her, but because it meant I'd never really known her at all. The woman I'd married had been a performance. And this comfortable criminal lounging in stolen luxury, this was who she really was. I documented everything. Photographed their cars, their purchases, their weekend trips to wine country that they plastered all over social media. They weren't even trying to hide their wealth. Why would they? I was locked away, discredited, destroyed. They'd won, or so they thought. After 6 weeks of surveillance, I noticed something. Trent still worked at the hotel, still had the same access to financial systems that he'd used to frame me. I started following him to work, watching his patterns, his routines. That's when I saw a young woman, mid-20s, meeting him in the parking lot. He'd lean into her car window, chatting, smiling, that same smile I'd seen in the photo with Sienna. My blood went cold. They were doing it again. I contacted a cybersecurity expert, someone Luca had referred me to before my release. Cost me everything Paige and I had scraped together, but he was worth it. We set up monitoring on Trent's digital footprint legally gray, but I was past caring about gray areas. Over the next 6 weeks, we watched the pattern emerge like a snake uncoiling. The young woman worked in the hotel's accounting department. Trent had been helping her with computer problems, gaining access to her credentials, her systems. He was grooming another victim, setting up another fall guy. And somewhere in the background, I'd bet my life Sienna was already circling, ready to play her part. That's when I realized we'd been thinking about this all wrong. We didn't just need to prove they'd framed me. We needed to catch them doing it again. We needed to show this wasn't a one-time desperate act. This was their business model. Sienna found the marks, Trent executed the fraud, and they both walked away rich while innocent people rotted in cells. They'd made one critical mistake. They'd gotten comfortable. They'd assumed I was broken, that prison had hollowed me out and left me harmless. They were about to learn that the most dangerous prey is the kind that's learned to hunt back. I made an anonymous call to the hotel's corporate security. Didn't give my name, just pointed them toward irregular access patterns in their financial systems. Timestamps that didn't match employee schedules. Credentials being used from multiple locations simultaneously. The kind of red flags that any competent security team would have to investigate. Then I waited. Patience had become my greatest weapon, and I'd learned it in a cell they'd put me in. At the same time, my new lawyer, a real one this time, it's paid for with the last of Paige's savings, filed a motion to reopen my case. We presented everything. Timeline inconsistencies, showing Sienna had access to my laptop the nights the transfers occurred. Witness statements from coworkers who remembered her visiting the office. Trent's criminal history, and most damning, evidence of their relationship starting years before my arrest. The judge agreed to review it. Not an exoneration, not yet, but a crack in the wall they'd built around me. Then the hotel's internal investigation hit Trent like a freight train. Corporate security confronted him about suspicious system access, his unauthorized credential usage, and the digital fingerprints he'd left all over files he had no business touching. I wasn't there, but my cybersecurity contact had eyes inside. He told me Trent went pale, started sweating, immediately tried to log into his computer to delete files. But it was too late. We'd already copied everything. Every keystroke, every login, every manipulation. When Trent realized he was caught, he did exactly what cowards do. He pointed the finger at the young woman he'd been grooming, tried to make her the scapegoat, just like he'd done to me. Except this time, security had server logs, IP addresses, and authentication records that told a different story. Every suspicious transaction traced back to Trent's credentials, Trent's workstation, Trent's access times. The evidence was overwhelming. Those same words they'd used to bury me were now a noose around his neck. They arrested him at his desk. Perp walked him through the lobby in handcuffs, while his coworkers watched. The news reached Sienna within the hour. I knew it would. I also knew exactly where she'd go. She rushed to the police station, probably planning to bail him out, to control the narrative, to spin another web of lies. That's where I was waiting. I saw her before she saw me. She walked through those doors frantic, designer purse clutched in her hand, heels clicking on the tile floor like countdown timer. Then her eyes found me, standing by the vending machines, and her entire face drained of color. For a second, she looked like she might faint. Shock, fear, recognition, all of it crashed across her features at once. Surprised to see me? I kept my voice level, cold. You thought 3 years would break me. She recovered quickly, I'll give her that. The mask slipped back into place, tears welling up on command. Ethan, I thought you were guilty. I was scared. I didn't know. Don't. I cut her off, stepping forward. You framed me. You stole my inheritance. You destroyed my career and sent me to prison so you could play house with your criminal boyfriend. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise. She tried to touch my arm, that old manipulation tactic. The soft touch that used to make me forgive anything. I stepped back like she was radioactive. You made your choice when you sent an innocent man to prison, I said. Now you get to live with it, okay? A detective approached, asked Sienna to come in for questioning. That's when the tears turned off like a faucet, and the real Sienna emerged. Her eyes went hard, her voice sharp. You have no proof. Trent acted alone. I didn't know anything. I smiled for the first time in 3 years. Really smiled. That's where you're wrong. The detective took her arm, guiding her toward the interrogation rooms. She looked back at me once, and all I saw was pure hatred. No more pretense. No more lies. Just the truth of who she'd always been, finally exposed. I watched them lead her away and felt absolutely nothing. No satisfaction, no anger. Just the cold certainty that justice was finally waking up. The evidence was a masterpiece of their own making. My cybersecurity expert testified in court, walking the jury through exactly how Trent had accessed my work accounts, manipulated transaction logs, and created a digital trail that pointed straight at me while covering his own tracks. But here's what they hadn't counted on: Trent wasn't as good as he thought he was. Every deleted file leaves a ghost. Every login creates a timestamp. Every manipulation leaves a scar in the code if you know where to look. Then came the surveillance footage. The hotel had kept security recordings going back 7 years, standard policy for a luxury chain. There she was, my loving wife, entering the building with Trent on the exact night the transfers were made. Her visitor badge showed she was there to see a friend in HR, but her keycard access told a different story. She'd gone straight to the server floor. The timestamp matched perfectly with the unauthorized access to my company's systems. They'd physically been together in that room the night they destroyed my life. But the real nail in their coffin came from Trent's old phone. He'd upgraded devices twice since my arrest, thought he'd covered his tracks. What he didn't know was that his cloud backup had kept everything, every text, every photo, every piece of communication. And there they were, messages between him and Sienna, planning it all. Once the husband's out of the way, we're free, Sienna had written. The inheritance alone will set us up for years. Trent's response: leave the technical side to me. He won't see it coming. They arrested Sienna 3 days after Trent, charged her as an accomplice to fraud, conspiracy and perjury for the false testimony she'd given at my trial. Watching her get handcuffed in the same house they'd bought with my money, that should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt like closing a book I wished I'd never opened. In court, they turned on each other like rats in a sinking ship. Trent claimed Sienna had planned everything, that she'd manipulated him, that he was just a lovesick fool doing what his girlfriend asked. Sienna swore she didn't know I was innocent, that Trent had convinced her I was guilty, that she'd been a victim too. The jury didn't buy either story. The evidence showed exactly what it was: a partnership built on greed and cruelty. Two people who'd found each other because they were the same kind of broken. My conviction was officially overturned on a Wednesday morning. The judge actually apologized for the miscarriage of justice. Acknowledged that the system had failed me. that 3 years of my life had been stolen. It should have felt like vindication. Mostly, it just felt like I could finally breathe again. Sienna got 6 years. 6 years more time than I'd actually served. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in that courtroom. Trent got 8+ restitution orders that would follow him for the rest of his life. As they led them away, Sienna looked back at me one last time. The tears were gone. The act was over. All that remained was pure, undiluted hatred. I held her gaze and felt nothing. She'd wanted to destroy me. Instead, she'd rebuilt me into something she couldn't touch. The state compensation for wrongful imprisonment wasn't enough, it never is, but combined with my returned inheritance and the settlement from my former company, it gave me options. I used the money to start a cybersecurity consulting firm with the expert who'd helped crack my case. Our specialty? Helping the wrongfully accused prove digital innocence. Turned out, there were a lot of people out there whose lives had been hijacked by someone else's crime. 6 months later, I sat in a coffee shop with Paige, the sister who'd sacrificed everything to save me. She asked if I'd found closure. I thought about it, really thought about it. Prison took 3 years of my life, I said finally. But it taught me patience, precision, and how to see people for who they really are. Not who they pretend to be, but who they actually are when they think no one's watching. Any regrets? She asked. Only one that I didn't see through Sienna sooner. But some lessons cost more than others. My phone buzzed. A message from a potential client. Another case of suspected digital fraud. Another innocent person fighting a system that had already decided they were guilty. I stood up, left cash on the table for the coffee. Time to help someone else get their life back, I said. Paige smiled. You know, I think prison might have been the worst thing that ever happened to you, and the best thing all at once. She wasn't wrong. Sienna and Trent had wanted me broken, desperate, erased from the world they were building. Instead, they'd given me something I'd never had before. Purpose. Real purpose. Not just auditing numbers for corporations that didn't care, but actually making a difference. Helping people who'd been where I'd been. Who knew what it felt like to scream the truth into a system that had already made up its mind. I walked out of that coffee shop into the afternoon sun, and for the first time in 6 years I felt something I'd forgotten existed. Not happiness, not exactly, but peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you survived something designed to destroy you and came out stronger on the other side. Sienna had tried to bury me. What she didn't realize was that she was planting seeds. And now, those seeds had grown into something she never could have imagined, a life built on helping others rise from the same grave she'd tried to put me in. Revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about building something better from the ruins they left behind. And every person I help, every case I crack, every innocent person who walks free, that's my revenge. That's my victory. They thought they'd written my ending. Turns out, they just gave me a new beginning, and I'm just getting started.